Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the BDC and to Republic for the honor of this invitation, as well as that warm introduction. It's greatly appreciated. It's amazing to follow an organization like Bridge of Hope. Strange coincidence. I have to say I'm extremely blessed in my family life in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm in a unique situation. I have 11 nephews under the age of 10 and 2 young boys of my own. In our family, there's been 13 boys in a row, and weekends are very exciting, I could say. But the reason I'm in Trinidad, I moved here in '98 from Canada. It seems to be a common thread today. My wonderful wife, coincidentally, a couple months ago, she put together a Thanksgiving. And of course, with that many boys under the age of 10, we have consistent behavioral issues to deal with. So she told me about this children's home called Bridge of Hope and said, well, we're going to organize a meal for them and take some toys and go over there. But we'll carry as many of the kids as we can so that they can get a real appreciation of how important it is that they understand having the blessing of parents at home and a strong home life, a loving environment. We wanted to show them the difference, obviously. And when we went to Bridge of Hope, it was a Friday afternoon, we drove out there. And I really must say, please try and follow through with what Jiwan had mentioned, because this place is incredible. I can't even tell you how surprised I was when we went to visit this home. The professionalism that they bring and how they teach the children, interact and work with the children is a true inspiration. If you really can stop by and see what they're doing, it would be so worth your time. But to get back to the teaching point that we were trying to work with our children, about halfway through, my 2 boys came up to me. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they said, Papa, can we stay here for the weekend? So my wife and I looked at each other and we were just like, in Gen Y parlance, epic fail. We didn't get the message across at all. But to go into total convenience management, when I moved here in 1998, I didn't find work for about 8 months. I still owed on the engagement ring, I think, when I arrived in Trinidad. And after a couple of adventures in management with 1 or 2 companies down here, I had a chance meeting with my business partner, Kirk Waith, who founded TCM in 2001. And if any of you know Kirk, in typical fashion, BP was looking for a contractor at the time to take over their whole fleet with kind of an innovative viewpoint from a real concierge perspective. And that time, TCM was only invested in fleet management, per se. We hadn't diversified into the transport, roadside, and leasing and rental component, which is my background. My specialty was actually in leasing and a rental of vehicles. So BP asked Kirk, well, you can do the concierge work with our internal fleet, but could you also provide rentals and perhaps lease units? So typical Kirk said, absolutely. When do you need it by? And BP said, well, we'd need something in paper, by tomorrow. So he immediately rushed out, called a mutual friend in Toyota, and that's how we connected. Kirk called me, we sat down that afternoon. I was at the time doing an online course for an MBA, and he asked me, could you actually produce this for tomorrow? And I said, well, yeah, I'll do my best. I don't have much going on right now, so that wouldn't be a problem. And that's how our partnership developed. In the intervening years, I've become the managing partner of the organization. And with a partnership with Toyota at that time, TCM is essentially a startup. I think we only had 3 employees at that point in time, and rapidly obviously grew to about 5 to 8 people. We bid on the BP contract against some of the multinational, or some of the large conglomerates, I should say, within the country, the Neil and Massey's and the Ansa McCalls, groups of that nature. And we were successful with Toyota's support and with the banking sector's support. And we did bring a level of service that hadn't before been seen in Trinidad. I think I can honestly state that with what we brought to the table from a roadside assistance perspective, that was not the norm back at the end of the 90s and early 2000s. You wouldn't have seen roadside assistance automatically included in your auto insurance or through your dealership if you purchased a new vehicle. And the standard that we set is what created that model for that to develop within the country and almost become a necessity as part of the value-added package that would come with many of these either products or services. I have to say I loved Justin's presentation as well, because and even Wendy spoke to the heart of when you're an entrepreneur, you do go through many ups and downs, and it's incredible that everybody has that type of experience. We've always grown through word of mouth, and on the face of what happened for us early in the decade, we grew very rapidly, almost too rapidly. And so we actually did have some major setbacks, over 05, 06, and 07, where we had to regroup and downsize a little bit. But the key for us in everything we've done has always been in recognizing that our reputation is our greatest asset. That has been the real key. No matter how hard the times that you might go through as an entrepreneur, you must stand behind your core values and your reputation as a service provider in whichever industry that you've chosen. And that is what sustained us through some difficult times. And in recognizing that, as a service-based company, as opposed to a manufacturer or the like, if your reputation is your greatest asset, then your people are the most important asset in your organization. And that's what I'd like to speak towards a little bit, especially with regards to the service industry. The first key, I think, really, is you have to know your people, you have to interact with your people. We have over 60 employees now throughout the organization doing executive transport, field representatives responding to accidents, roadside emergencies, technical division really with our GPS, which is in constant development and improvement, and then of course our leasing and rental fleet, which is probably in excess of about 200 vehicles to a number of multinationals around the country, especially in the energy sector now. In all of those activities, the face-to-face is the real key. How our people interact with the clients at a professional level. And really in getting your people to perform at a peak level, especially in Trinidad, you have got to understand the differing motivations. And Cheryl spoke wonderfully towards that in terms of, there are differing motivations for all of these generations. Everybody now is going to have distinct employment goals, but there are certain things that are very important from a leadership and management perspective that are universal. And that is, understanding that you must respect the dignity of your people, and you must value them, and you must show that not only through words, but also through deeds, and how you interact, keep an open door policy, and are in constant communication with them. When you speak towards how different people will view the same job, we speak about the different generations. This picture struck me because you have the one entity, the cat, just looking at the fish as a meal. Then you have the little boy looking to maybe feed the fish, grow the fish, and have the fish for the long-term future. And it's the same type of thing that you have to balance with people. We have plenty of employees that, will just be looking towards their next meal, just looking to make sure that they have that next paycheck. We have others, obviously, that are going to be looking long-term, trying to grow, trying to benefit with a longer view. I think three very important keys when you're talking about personnel. You have to have a family focus, a family feel, especially in small and medium businesses. I think that's key. We always try to work towards having our people engaged on multiple levels. We go a little bit above and beyond. Some things that I know some business people would say, well, you're crazy, and we have been burned on them. We do internal interest-free loans for our employees, which has come back to haunt us on occasion, certainly, but it's very important for some of them. And it gives them a certain flexibility as well in certain things that they need to do, especially in emergencies. We promote, beyond internal training, which is very vigilant, we promote education across a very broad range of areas. We have an open policy within our company. Anybody who wants to bring any kind of certification, degree work, anything that can line up with any of the core services or tasks that we perform inside of the company, we'll fund that 50% upfront, and then when they either are certified or earn the degree at the back end, then we will pay the other 50% of that certification, degree, what have you. We try to include families, in a larger level. One initiative that we used just to show value to our people, and of course some of these things aren't mandatory, obviously. You get to see initiative from certain people, and that's also an important learning process for management. But we had a self-defense course for all of our people. It was open to all of them and their children, over an 8-week period, twice a week. That's something near and dear to my heart because I actually volunteer teaching karate at La Jolla. I'm an assistant instructor there, so it just was a natural fit, but it was something that, of course, the employee base really, really valued. It's something that we weren't charging for. It's just something to engage them, recognize that we care about, those things with them, giving them additional benefits through the company. And then, of course, we really focus also on mentoring very strongly. Anytime we have a new employee coming into the company, they're paired with somebody from the outset for at least a 2 to 4 week period. And that's an ongoing process, not to do only the nuts and bolts training, but the long-term mentoring viewpoint of the core values of the company. One of the things that's been very important for us has been the reality where we understand that people, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. There we go. We have to ensure that they understand their reputational impact on the organization. And we reiterate that constantly. It's so important, especially in our industry, because there's so much competition, and especially in the current economy, with how many of the multinationals and the local AAA-rated companies are looking to cut budgets and respond to market conditions. You have to be able to stand out. You have to be able to distinguish yourself, and that's absolutely critical. Where our team gets involved, we have a very high turnover in the first 6 months of our organization. If our team will often refer people. We have other people, we even have clients that come to us and say, how do you find such good, motivated people? How do you manage that? We have real trouble in our organization with that. Many of our employees are actually referred to us by our internal personnel, by our team that's out in the field. And they'll apply internal pressure on those individuals to perform, because everybody has to have each other's back. So we make the internal customer as important as the external customer in many cases. And that has been hugely successful for us. As I said, we have very high turnover in the first 6 months because we really do push people. But beyond that 6-month time frame, we have almost zero turnover. People that come to engage the organization, understand how we care about the individual, they'll stay forever. I can count on a couple of hands, 6 or 7 people that have risen to our organization have left to go on to more lucrative situations. And even 3 or 4 of those individuals have ultimately come back to us. because of how they view how the organization looks towards their interests and how it takes care of them. One of the keys that I found, especially since coming, or one of the things that surprised me coming to Trinidad, is the level of micromanagement that I perceived throughout the country. When I first came here, I was a little surprised by that. My background was much more about empowering individuals, learning to trust individuals. And it's a key element, especially if you're going to have your people out there being the face of your organization, making quick decisions in the field, and being able to treat with professional clients across a wide range of industries. And when you empower your people to do that on a frontline basis, it's important to be very disciplined in reward structures, as well as disciplinary structures, is something that we found is a mix. And a very good example of this is we actually, as our executive transport portfolio was growing, we were working with a multinational engineering firm that was working diligently on the Cannonball platform project for BP, which was a huge project around the middle of the decade. And what happened was there were so many consultants and engineers just coming in all the time. And for whatever reason, most of us here know this, in Trinidad, flights coming out of North America or Europe seem to always land about 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. It seems like we have the back end of that priority listing. And our people were consistently being forced into a situation where they're having to go out for a 3 a.m. on a Sunday, a 2 a.m. on a Saturday. And of course, we would do the proper breaks and relax time so that they would be in the proper frame of mind to do the work, but it's never appealing. And so with the increased business that was occurring, it was starting to exceed our logistics. We would have some slips. We would have some gaps. People would miss. And of course, when that happens, you always know it's like a vice president of operations or somebody along those lines where those things occur. So how we were creative in how we dealt with that is where we took our transport team and we said, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. Every time you do an individual transport, you will earn 5%, of the billable invoice on that transport scenario. However, if during the course of a month you are late or miss any one, say they had like 10 during the course of the month, if you are late or miss on any one of the 10, you'll lose the commission on all 10, not just the one, for that 1 month period. And what happened was apparently all the alarm clocks synchronized almost instantaneously. So we didn't have any more lapses in that regard, and it ran absolutely like clockwork. And what was even nicer about that is, once you have that kind of team, family type network, what we saw is there would be individuals that would really push for that type of work because obviously they wanted to have the opportunity to earn, maybe 25%, 30, 40% of their existing monthly salary because of how those bonuses might add up during the month. Other individuals would take a step back and say, you know what, I'm more concerned with having, personal time, family time. And so that they would, allow those other individuals to step forward and earn that those additional funds while they took a step back. And so it was an evolution that was very successful for us, both in delivering service, but also taking care of our employees. So it was a very strong win-win. I think there's certain levels of how you try to help to build people. And again, I thought it was very telling what Cheryl was saying. Young people today, we have many young people in our organization, and it's so nice to see some of them really grasp, additional educational programs, especially if we're willing to back them on them. And that really is a wonderful carrot or a tool, I think, for organizations to really go after. We have one manager who's been with us just over 10 years. He's earned his master's degree in strategic business through TCM. He just finished his law degree with honors. And now he's going back for a master's in health and management safety. And this is something we've supported him with, throughout the entire, tenure of his career. The give back there is, as you might have read in the bio, we've taken over now all of Atlantic's personnel transport, which is a huge portfolio of business in moving all of their personnel. It takes about 7 to 8 30-seater buses on a daily basis, running from San Fernando into Point Fortin and back. And this manager was able to secure that business under his own power because of the education that TCM had provided him, the skills that it gave him. So even though it was a little bit outside of the scope of his work at the time, it enabled him to enhance what was able to be delivered back to the company. And those are sometimes the hidden rewards by putting yourself out as an organization to push people to become educated at a higher level, even beyond internal training and those types of works. I think it's a very important thing to understand, especially with the current workforce, the younger generation. If you really can help people grow, it is going to give tremendous returns back to your organizations. And when you do that, when you trust, when you empower, you do have to be able to confront. You have to lay down the rules. You have to be able to stipulate, this is why, okay? It must be done this way. If it's not, we will put rewards in place, but there will also be discipline on the opposite side. And you can't shy away from that if you're going to trust people and empower people. A very good example, in our roadside assistance team, of course, we have units that are mobile throughout the country. And it's a team that's 10 to 12 strong. And you'll have a natural scenario that occurs where we have a 24-hour dispatch center. And of course, calls come in from an accident or a breakdown or what have you, all through the day, late at night, whatever you may have. And what you'll find is you have, dispatchers will warm to one individual field representative who is always so quick to respond. You'll have that person who answers the phone even at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday night, and the guy will say, hey, where do I gotta go? Where are you sending me? The next guy you call will be like, what the hell? I was just on something at midnight. Can't you call the other guy? And that's just personalities and how you deal with personalities. Why I mention that in terms of discipline, we have to stipulate, to our field reps, if you do miss a call or you offline, and can't be reached, we have to discipline you because we can't let you let down the other team members because they'll ultimately perceive that as a slight and it'll start to erode their confidence in the organization and their attitude in the field. And so it's something that goes very close in hand, and communication is a very important piece of that. You have to lay out the parameters and allow people to understand you have to have your teammates back. I just love that picture. And so yeah, if you lay out exactly what the rule is, then you have to follow through. I think one of the toughest things that I've ever had to do as a manager, we had one of our most promising senior managers in around 2007, 2006, I believe, and we had just funded him to complete an MBA course. And he, unfortunately, was a passenger in a vehicle where there was a drinking and driving incident. And the whole senior staff had to gather on this because it was so distressing. This was one of the best liked individuals in the company, somebody who was being groomed for greater things, who we just funded for an MBA program. And at the end of the day, we had to stick to our core values and we had to let him go. We had to terminate his employment. And it was one of the most difficult things that we've ever had to do. But sometimes you have to send the correct message back to your people. If you're going to stick to your core values, you have to stick to them through the very best and the very worst of situations. Otherwise, it'll send the completely wrong message to the rest of your people. And then in constantly finding new ways to reward individuals, I think that's very important. Always try and find creative ways to tie bonus structures to performance or salary structures to performance. That's something that I've carried from me back since I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car in Western Canada, which is, I think, now actually surpassed Hertz as the largest rental company in North America, potentially Europe now as well. And everything was tied to performance very closely. And so it was a young team that was always motivated to do their very best because of that. And that is a critical aspect that I think is sometimes overlooked in Trinidad. If you can be creative and find ways to marry compensation to performance, it will ignite a fire within your people, and it will do wonders for your overall corporate performance in how they pursue certain scenarios, how they deliver service, their attitude towards what they're doing, what their tasks are within the organization. And then you have to always cultivate an open line of communication back from your people as well. That's very critical. They need to know that when they're coming back to you with ideas and with ways to, improve the business, that you are open to that you're willing to sit down with them, hash through it, look at different options. One of the great things about, we have a relationship with the Business Development Corporation, and it was completely outside of my doing. Our accounts manager actually sourced them to bring to my attention when we first sat down, and it paired together with our service manager, who had come to me and said, look, the fleet's growing, we're outsourcing all of this tire work, all of this alignment work, we really need to bring in our own equipment because it would key so many efficiencies within the company. It would be absolutely excellent if we could do this. The traditional banking for that type of equipment wanted 50% down, which did not make sense from a cash flow standpoint internally. But what the BDC did, because they look specifically to heavy equipment scenarios like that, they were able to do it at only about a 20% equity piece from TCM. And so we were able to manage to orchestrate that, again, totally outside of my own purview. Two managers came together, brought it to me, packaged it, and then we were able to finalize it. And what that did for us was incredible because, at the time we were subcontracting alignment and tire change fees to the tune of about $30,000 a month, and the lease cost that we have now is $9,000 a month. And not only that, but there was a recognition that now every time we see a vehicle in any of our fields, we go and do an alignment check as a preventative measure. And of course, in the rental industry, oftentimes you're only hearing from the customer saying, hey, listen, I've picked up a shimmy, things don't feel right. Could you check this for us? And by the time that's occurred, you've already incurred 15, 20% tire wear, when a vehicle's out of alignment like that. And so I'm not even able to yet measure the potential savings to the organization as a whole on the basis of that development that came out of open lines of communication from our senior people. Very, very important. And that's where you build a sense of team. When you have those open lines of communication, it's critical because people sense that you value their input, you value them, what they bring to your organization, and it really leads to more of a growing organization. I think one of the key things also that I've seen, certainly in my last 10 years experience with TCM, is that people really need to start to embrace technology more and more. Oftentimes you may need to speak to the right people in that regard, but simply because of what's become accessible at a faster and faster rate, so many times there are solutions that just leap out and can do so much for your organization. For us, one of the biggest things has been global positioning technology. And that has been something that is, with vehicle tracking, has really been transcendent for us in terms of efficiency, fleet management, and the like. We actually got it. We were the first company to get involved with GPS in Trinidad. And it was back as early as actually 2003, 2004, because at the time we were working for one of the energy sector companies and using radio frequency tracking. And they were having expatriates come into the country, and the vehicles were parking, if you know that big sink back behind the Hilton. The frequencies couldn't get through. And so, of course, this is something we were promising because we had panic alerts. That's one of the facilities that we had where you could press this and it would give an alert so that there could be a response. And, of course, they were testing it as an HSSE protocol, and there was no signal coming out, and we weren't responding. And so we realized there was a huge gap in the country because there was nobody doing satellite tracking at that time. In retrospect, I wish we'd honestly waited because we invested a heck of a lot. And it was, now it's obviously just out of a box, that type of technology. Of course, it's very important to have the people behind it and the experience behind it, but it is accessible. And these are things to be explored in technology. People often talk about, out-of-the-box thinking. But I prefer to think now that there are out-of-the-box solutions if you just pursue and investigate and always reevaluate how your cost structures are running and how those things could be answered by technology just by looking at a few simple questions. I remember when we were first testing out the GPS back even in, I think it was 2005, we were so gung-ho about this that we actually, if you remember, Hurricane Ivan was passing through, and we felt that that would have been the best cloud cover event close by. So we actually were out field testing with a couple of our key people just to see if it would still run properly while that was occurring. That actually didn't go over so well with some of our people. But it's incredible what's available now. What this can do, in the past, oftentimes you'll have vehicles slip through the cracks where you have a customer call back and say, hey, look, I think I passed my service check. It's probably, I was due at 20,000 kilometers and now it's at 24, 25, 30. Who knows, how much you might have missed, depending on what the lapse might have been. How we structured it now with the GPS is that it's an automatic email alert 500 kilometers before the service event occurs. So say the vehicle crosses 9,500, our dispatch unit gets an email alert stipulating that the vehicle's service event should be due at 10,000, and that might be coming in 2 weeks. So our immediate call to the client becomes, Mr. Johnson, we saw that you just passed. How is your schedule for the next 2 weeks? Because now we can, orchestrate that right at the 10,000 mark. And those are the types of solutions that can really impress people in terms of customer service. One of the key selling points in us orchestrating Atlantic's transport was the fact that they have automatic, real-time updates, bus speeds, arrival time, departure time. They know exactly where their personnel are. It's essentially automated journey management, which gives them complete control and access for their HSSE protocols, which are so important. And obviously security is a concern as well. So the panic alerts are something that have evolved and available to all of our clients. We keep, when we install, we make sure there's one secreted under the steering column and as well as one in the trunk. So that if anything ever occurs, we can now respond. And especially, for theft recovery, that's important. It's gotten to the level now where if we get a panic alert and the customer confirms that the vehicle was stolen, we'll dispatch one of our roadside units to get line of sight on the vehicle. And when the dispatch, the individual at the computer can view that the vehicle's come to a complete stop on the screen, and then our field representative confirms that situation via direct line of sight, we can now kill the engine and activate the horn. So you're sitting there, you just stole a car, you come to the first stoplight or whatever, you're trying to look inconspicuous, boom, the car shuts off, the horn starts to go off, and if we've done our job properly, our field unit will actually be in coordination with the police as well. So as the person jumps out of the vehicle and tries to run away, they could be obviously captured in one instant. And that Arrive Alive really helps in that situation because we have a very good relationship with the police. So they will respond in those situations to us. We have a few numbers aside from just 999 to get through with, so that is very helpful for us. I can just imagine what that comment was. Sorry. So just to finalize, you have to constantly reinforce teamwork. That's critical, especially if your service reputation means everything to your organization. You've got to take care of your people. You have to find creative and innovative ways to do that, and your reputation will follow. Thanks very much.